Is Alex Eala the next big thing in tennis? Born in Quezon City, Philippines, Alex left home at just 13 to sharpen her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy.
The Philippine Senate has filed a resolution honoring Filipina tennis sensation Alex Eala for her remarkable semifinal run at the 2025 Miami Open.
The rise of a nation. Alex Eala is changing tennis forever, and the world is finally paying attention.
She was the U.S. Open Junior Champion, and the world was paying attention. Her breakout moment? The 2025 Miami Open. Alex.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Champions Tennisitics, the channel where the drama never stops, the passion never dies, and the stories that make tennis worth watching are told the way they deserve to be told. Loud, proud, and with zero apologies. Today, we are talking about a 20-year-old girl from Quezon City, Philippines, who has done something absolutely staggering to the women's tennis world. She has crashed the gates, stolen the headlines, and quite literally changed the sport forever. We are talking about Alexandra "Alex" Eala, the pride of the Philippines, the heir apparent to women's tennis royalty, and the most electrifying story in the sport right now. Buckle up, because we have a lot of ground to cover. Let's start at the very beginning of this story, because to understand just how insane Alex Eala's rise has been, you need to understand exactly where she was standing not very long ago. Cast your mind back to early 2025. Alex Eala walks into the Miami Open ranked number 140 in the world. 140. She wasn't even supposed to be there, people. She got into the draw on a wild card, which is essentially the tennis equivalent of being handed a backstage pass at a concert and somehow ending up as the main act. Nobody in the broader tennis world knew her name. Nobody was tweeting about her. Nobody was packing stadiums to watch her warm up. She was just a young girl with a dream, a left-handed forehand that could peel paint off the wall, and absolutely nothing to lose. What happened next was one of the most breathtaking sequences in modern women's tennis history. In the quarterfinal, she came up against world number 2 Iga Swiatek, the then 5-time Grand Slam champion, and she stunned her 6-2, 7-5 to reach the semifinal. Let that sink in. A wildcard ranked 140th in the world, in just her first real run at a WTA 1000 event, dismantling one of the greatest players of her generation as if she had been doing this her entire life. The tennis world collectively dropped its jaw. Who was this kid? Where did she come from? And more importantly, why hadn't anyone been watching her sooner? Before that Miami run, she had already dispatched Jelena Ostapenko and Madison Keys along the way, which means she was already on a ridiculous streak of giant killing before she even got to Swiatek. 3 Grand Slam champions, Ostapenko, Keys, Swiatek, all dispatched by a girl on a wild card who wasn't supposed to be there. You honestly cannot write this stuff. She eventually fell to Jessica Pegula in the semifinals, which hurt, but by that point it didn't matter. The damage, or rather, the magic, had already been done. Alex Eala was a name the tennis world would never forget again. On March 31st, 2025, she entered the WTA's top 100 as the first Filipino in the history of the rankings to ever do so, sitting at number 75. First Filipino in WTA ranking history. The history books weren't just being written, they were being rewritten entirely, page by page, tournament by tournament, every single week. And then, as if all of that wasn't enough, she went to the U.S. Open in the summer of 2025. During her debut, she defeated Clara Tauson in the first round, becoming the first Filipino player to achieve a match victory in a major tournament in the Open era. The Open era. That means since 1968. For nearly 60 years, no Filipino player had ever won a match at a Grand Slam in the main draw. Alex Eala changed that at 20 years old. If you are not emotional right now, you need to check your pulse. After making her Grand Slam debut at Roland Garros in 2025, she bounced back from her U.S. Open second-round exit by heading to Guadalajara, Mexico, where she captured her first WTA 125 title, another first for Philippine tennis. The girl doesn't stop. She doesn't sit around and bask in the glory of one milestone. She turns around, walks into the next tournament, and manufactures another one. It's almost supernatural. By November 2025, she had climbed into the top 50 of the WTA rankings, the highest position of her still young and promising career, and a number that would have seemed like a fantasy to anyone watching her grind through ITF events just 18 months earlier. But here's the thing about champions. They don't peak. They accelerate. And in 2026, Eala has been doing exactly that. Going faster, going harder, going bigger, and taking the entire sport of women's tennis along for the ride. The 2026 season opened with Eala already carrying the weight of expectation that most players don't feel until their late 20s, if at all. She wasn't just representing herself anymore. She was representing a nation of over 100 million people who had fallen completely and utterly in love with tennis because of her. In November 2025, capitalizing on the country's surging interest in tennis, the WTA announced the creation of the Philippine Women's Open, the country's first ever WTA tournament. Tickets for the final were sold out before Eala had even confirmed her participation. Think about that. Sold out before she confirmed. That is not just a fan base. That is a phenomenon. That is a movement. And then came Dubai. Oh, Dubai? She ran all the way to the quarterfinals of the WTA 1000 event there, taking out Jasmine Paolini for her third top 10 win of her career before ultimately falling to Coco Gauff. The Gauff match in Dubai is one we need to sit on for a moment, because it becomes incredibly important in about 30 seconds. Gauff won that one comfortably, 6-love, 6-2. A proper schooling. And after the match, Gauff stepped up to the microphone and said something that has been quoted everywhere ever since. She addressed the packed, overwhelmingly pro-Eala crowd and said, "Thank you for coming out. I know you were mostly supporting Alex, but I have to say it's great to be on a crowded court. And I'd like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate it. I think it's great." Coco Gauff, a two-time Grand Slam champion, one of the biggest names in the sport, publicly crediting a 20-year-old Filipina for bringing entirely new audiences to tennis. That is not a small moment. That is a seismic cultural moment. Tennis needed this. Women's sports needed this. And Eala delivered it without even trying. Then came Indian Wells, the 2026 BNP Paribas Open. And this, friends, is where the story gets absolutely cinematic. A day-in-the-life video featuring Eala posted to the tournament's official YouTube channel became the most viewed content of the entire event, and it wasn't even close. The players on the draw sheet include Aryna Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, Elena Rybakina, established, decorated champions. And the most watched video from the whole tournament was about Eala. You cannot manufacture that kind of star power. It just is. Even before playing a single match at Indian Wells, her supporters packed her practice sessions. The Filipino diaspora in California came out in numbers that nobody had seen before for a tennis player at this tournament. They stayed up late. They sat in the cold desert air at midnight. They screamed for every winner, every clutch hold, every single point. She had to dig deep against Diana Yastremska in a grueling 3-set battle, nearly falling out of the tournament before winning 7-5, 4-6, 7-5 in a match that nearly gave her fans heart attacks in real time. But she got through. And then she walked into her rematch against Coco Gauff, the same player who had beaten her 6-love, 6-2 just weeks earlier. What transpired was nothing short of a statement. Eala dictated play with consistent depth and aggressive returns, breaking Gauff in all 4 of the American service games in the opening set, rolling to 5 consecutive games to seal it, while Gauff committed 7 double faults. Eala was dismantling a 2-time Grand Slam champion on one of the biggest stages in tennis, on Stadium 1 at Indian Wells, in front of a crowd that was absolutely delirious. Gauff finished the match with 26 unforced errors compared to just 12 from Eala, highlighting her ability to stay composed in the longer rallies and capitalize on her opponent's lapses. Gauff ultimately retired with a left arm injury while trailing 6-2, 2-0 in the second, making her the 4th Grand Slam champion that Eala has defeated, joining Swiatek, Keys, and Ostapenko on that increasingly staggering list. For Grand Slam champions, beaten by a 20-year-old who a year ago was ranked 140 in the world. This is not a fairy tale. This is a takeover. Following her Indian Wells run, Eala set a new career-high ranking of number 29 in the world, cementing her place not just in the top 30, but in the genuine conversation about who the future of women's tennis belongs to. The Philippines had a world number 29 player. the first Filipino player ever to crack the top 30 in the entire history of the WTA rankings, stretching back to 1975. Over half a century of rankings history, and no Filipino had ever done it. Until this girl. Now, here's where we arrive at the present moment, and things get a little more complicated. Because greatness is never a straight line, and champions are forged not in their triumphs alone, but in how they respond to the challenges that reveal what they're truly made of. The 2026 clay season has not been kind to Alex Eala. Not yet. Clay court success has remained elusive for the Filipina, who has not managed more than one win in a clay court tournament since reaching the third round of qualifying at the 2024 French Open. At the Linz Open in Austria just recently, she felt a former French Open champion Jelena Ostapenko in the round of 16. And then came Stuttgart, the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, and another brutal lesson on the red dirt. In a marquee clash between two players with Filipino roots, it was Leylah Fernandez who emerged triumphant, controlling their round of 32 tie from the very first game to overwhelm Eala in straight sets, 1-6, 4-6. Now here's the fascinating subplot that makes this particular match one of the most interesting storylines of the clay season. Leylah Fernandez, the world number 25, is herself of partial Filipino descent, born to a Filipino-Canadian mother and an Ecuadorian father. So this wasn't just a tennis match. For the Filipino diaspora watching around the world, this was a genuinely complex sporting emotion to navigate. Two players with Filipino heritage, facing off on the clay courts of Stuttgart, Germany. One representing Canada, one representing the Philippines. One dominating, one struggling. Fernandez used her forehand to dictate rallies early and keep Eala from settling into the match. The numbers from the Stuttgart defeat tell a story of a player who hasn't yet found her footing on clay. Eala managed just 52% of first serves in and won only 40% of points on her second delivery. Fernandez converted 4 of 8 break chances and dominated the baseline exchanges from start to finish. It was, by any measure, a tough afternoon. But, and this is a massive but, there is context here that matters enormously. Clay is the most physically demanding, technically complex surface in tennis. It rewards patience, topspin, slide, and an entirely different set of tactical instincts than the hard courts where Eala has been making her name. The great players in tennis history have all had to learn clay. Rafael Nadal mastered it beyond all human comprehension. Even Novak Djokovic, widely regarded as the greatest of all time, lost to Nadal on clay almost religiously for years before finding his own game there. Struggling on clay early in your career, when you are 20 years old and barely a year into your full WTA run, is not a crisis. It is an education. And here's the most exciting part. Despite the setbacks, Eala has already secured a spot in the main draw of Roland Garros 2026, earning her return to the clay courts of the French Open as a ranked player rather than a qualifier fighting just to get in the door. Last year, she made her French Open debut and exited in the first round. This year, she goes to Paris as a seeded presence in the draw, as one of the most watched players on tour, and as a woman who has beaten 4 Grand Slam champions in the past 13 months. The question is not whether Alex Eala belongs at Roland Garros. The question is how far she can go once she finds her clay court footing. But before Paris, there is Madrid. The Mutua Madrid Open begins on April 21st, and it represents Eala's first WTA 1000 clay event of the season. The Caja Magica in the Spanish capital, played at altitude, under the famous Madrid sun, with the red dirt doing its slow, punishing work on every player who steps onto it. This is one of the most prestigious clay tournaments on the calendar, and the draw is always loaded with the sport's very best. And it's where Eala gets her first real chance to announce herself on the dirt, to show the tennis world that the clay question mark next to her name is one she intends to erase before Roland Garros rolls around. There is also the small matter of rankings pressure that adds another layer of drama to everything unfolding right now. She is defending nearly 400 points from her extraordinary 2025 Miami run, and with the rolling 52-week system, she has already slipped from her career high. She arrived at Miami this year as a seeded player for the first time, not a wild card, not an unknown, but a seeded, ranked, expected to perform competitor. The expectations have shifted entirely. She is no longer the anonymous upstart sneaking up on people. She is now the player other players are gunning for. And yet, and this is perhaps the most telling measure of Eala as a competitor, none of that seems to shake her. She has spoken with a clarity and emotional intelligence that belies her 20 years entirely. She described her Miami 2025 run as the highlight of her career so far, but in the same breath made it clear that she doesn't intend for it to remain the highlight. This is a player who sets milestones and then immediately starts planning the next one. Top 100 done. Top 75 done. Top 50 done. Top 30 done. Top 29 done. What comes next? Top 20? Top 10? A Grand Slam quarterfinal? A Roland Garros final on the red clay of Paris with 100 million people back home, watching with tears streaming down their faces? Don't scoff at that last one. Nobody scoffed that she would beat Swiatek at Miami, and look how that turned out. She currently has almost 1 million followers on Instagram, more than double that of higher-ranked players who have been on tour for years longer than her. She is not just winning on the court, she is winning the culture. The tournament directors are noticing. The Dubai tournament director publicly credited her for an influx of new fans, saying stadiums were sold out for all of her matches, and that people were desperately trying to get tickets that were already gone. Sold out. In Dubai? For a 20-year-old Filipino tennis player who a year ago almost nobody outside the Philippines had heard of. This is what a genuine phenomenon looks like, and we are watching it in real time. There is a tendency, when covering stories like this one, to get so swept up in the history-making and the records and the rankings that you lose sight of the human being at the center of it all. So let's take a moment to acknowledge what Eala has actually endured to get here. She left home as a teenager to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, one of the most demanding tennis environments on earth. She spent years grinding through ITF tournaments across the globe, collecting titles on obscure courts in front of tiny crowds, staying patient through years when the big breakthrough felt impossibly far away. She qualified through Junior Slams and won the US Open Juniors title in 2022 as the first Filipino ever to do so. And then, after all of that, she walked into Miami with a wild card and changed everything. The journey here was not handed to her, not a single step of it. And that's precisely why the story resonates so deeply, not just with Filipinos, but with anyone who has ever been told they're not ready, they're not ranked high enough, they don't belong. Eala belongs. She's been proving it for years, and she's going to keep proving it for years more to come. So here's where we stand today, Champions Tennisitics family. Eala is ranked number 45 in the world, down from her career high of 29 as the points defense reality kicks in. Heading into the 2026 Madrid Open, her first WTA 1000 clay event of the season. She has struggled on clay in Linz and Stuttgart. She has Roland Garros waiting in late May, where she steps onto the red clay of Paris as a legitimate main draw player for the second time in her career. She has the weight of a nation behind her, the attention of the entire tennis world upon her, and the talent, the mentality, and the work ethic to go as far as her legs and her left-handed serve can carry her. The clay test is real. The pressure is real. The scrutiny is real. But so is Eala. And if the last 14 months have taught us anything, it's that betting against this girl is a habit you will very quickly regret. Team Eala, this one is for you. This story isn't over. It hasn't even reached its most dramatic chapter yet. The best is still ahead, and we are going to be right here on Champions Tennisitics, covering every single moment of it. If this video fired you up, smash that like button with everything you've got. Drop a comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Team Eala is global, and we want to see just how far this family stretches. Subscribe to Champions Tennisitics if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single update on the most exciting story in women's tennis. The Madrid Open is days away. Roland Garros is on the horizon. The story of Eala is just getting started, and you do not want to be the one who missed it. One team, one dream. Let's go, Eala.
Born in Quezon City, Philippines, Alex left home at just 13 to sharpen her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. By 2022,